morning, UTM. How are you doing today? Good. Well, let me start with a little bit of jeopardy. The answer is 13%. What's the question? Any guesses, anyone? No? The question is, what proportion of the global employee workforce is truly energized, happy, and satisfied with their work? Only 13%. Which means a whopping 87% are unhappy and not engaged at work. Can you believe that? 87% of people around the world are unhappy at the workplace. And this sorry state has existed for decades on end, despite the fact that humongous amounts of management time and money is spent on measuring and propping up employee engagement. There is absolutely no shortage of books or advice available on how to increase your employees' engagement. It's a full-fledged industry out there, and yet the numbers are so staggeringly low. You ever thought about why that is? Well, lots of theories about why that is, but in my opinion, it is because most management practice in some of the best companies in the world to the smallest companies in the world, most management practice is based on two assumptions that are long held but happen to be false. What are those false assumptions? The first is all employees must be encouraged to write stretch goals, tough goals, and then we should supervise them closely to make sure that they achieve them. After all, that is the job of a manager, isn't it? To push and force employees to write stretch goals and to achieve them by managing them every day. Second assumption, if we let people, employees, to their own devices, they will do as little as possible and the organization's overall productivity will take a nosedive. This is what most management practice is based on. Now, on the face of it, you might argue that there's nothing wrong with these statements, right? After all, as they say, they've stood the test of time. Well, I'm here to tell you that they actually haven't stood the test of time. And actually, there is one universal law of nature that we've known for over 100 years that has stood the test of time, but is completely ignored by management experts all over the world. And that is the well-known 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle. Have you heard of the 80-20 rule? Show me a show of hands. Yes, we all have, right? Now, let me give you some background about this 80-20. In 1906, Vilfredo Pareto, an Italian economist and sociologist, noticed that 80% of land and 80% of wealth in Italy belonged to 20% of Italians. He also noticed that 20% of the pods in his garden produced 80% of his peas. He thought, could this be true beyond my garden and beyond Italy? Well, he looked around for wealth and land ownership patterns in all European countries around Italy and found it to be true in every single country he looked at. He then looked at agricultural produce in general and found the 80-20 rule to be true there. 20% of the seeds produce 80% of the crop. That seems to be a universal norm all over the world. In the next few decades, mathematicians and scientists alike looked for proof of 80-20 in other walks of life and found that it was universally applicable, whether it was in customer service. 20% of your customers produce 80% of your complaints. Whether it's in sales, 20% of your salespeople produce 80% of your sales. Whether it's in software development and software bugs, 20% of the codes produce 80% of the bugs. Everywhere, 80-20 rules. And yet, this is the one principle which has stood the test of time, which is ignored by management consultants. But the other assumptions that I showed you, those, they say, have stood the test of time. Now, when it comes to managing human performance in a traditional organization, there is a derivative of this 80-20 rule, and it is called the 20-60-20 rule, but you might have heard of it or seen of it as the infamous bell curve. Now, in the corporate circles, this bell curve is hated, and managers around the world blame the HR department of inflicting this on them. But actually, HR is absolutely right in this instance, because this is nothing but the derivative of the law of nature called 80-20. What it says is that in any organization, 20% of the people will be high performers, top performers. These people go above and beyond every day, right? When it comes to achieving stretch goals, they are the ones who actually achieve them, the top 20%. Then there are 60% of the people that are average employees, right? They do good work, but they're average. And then 20% will be bottom employees. Everybody cannot be a superstar, and everybody cannot be useless. In any organization that you go to, in any group of people, if you plot performance distribution, it's going to take a bell-shaped curve like the one you're seeing on your screen. It's a fact of life. But when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to the beginning of the year and setting performance expectations, management teams around the world do the same thing. They ask all 100% of the employees to write stretch, tough goals, and encourage them throughout the year through supervision to achieve them. Well, we know that only the top 20% are going to achieve them, and yet year after year, everybody is forced to write those stretch goals and those tough goals and manage so that they can be, only to be disappointed 80% of the times, year after year after year. You know, Albert Einstein, another genius like Pareto, told us a long, long time ago that if you keep trying to do the same thing again and again and again, hoping for a different result, that is the definition of insanity. Yeah, but that's kind of what's going on here, right? It's unbelievable, isn't it? What if, instead of forcing everybody to achieve and write stretch goals, what if we allowed our employees to choose with their own free will, based on their own unique circumstances, where they want to be on this bell curve? What if we gave people the freedom to choose how much or how little they want to work? Oh, that's impossible. We would lose control, isn't it? What is he talking about? Well, of course, this will make employees very happy. That's obvious, right? I'm going to prove to you today that this is actually going to make organizational performance and productivity go up rather than down. Wouldn't that be amazing? Give people the freedom to do as little work as they want to do, and your organization does better? How can that be? Well, watch. Let's go back to our bell curve to understand this a little bit better. See, for some people, for some of us, the work, the job that we do, that is the main purpose of our life. Some people get out of bed because of the job. It makes them so energized, it makes them so happy that they are super energized. They want to do nothing but the best. So even if you tell them, hey, we only expect the minimum from you, they say, what minimum? I want to do the maximum. I want to create the maximum impact, and I want to get rewarded at the maximum level as well. I am ambitious. These are the people that end up in your top 20%. Make sense? Right? And then there are people in the next 60% who are good workers. They want to do they take pride in their work, but they have other priorities as well. Now imagine a culture in which the following conversation between an employee and the boss was possible. Imagine, hey boss, you know that I've been in the last several years performing at the top 20%. I've been getting amazing results, and thank you for the amazing bonuses and the amazing promotions that you've been giving me for my work. I'm grateful for that. But you know also that I've just become a parent. And for the next year or two, I'd like to take my foot off the pedal a little bit. I'll still do good work, but I don't want to work 20 hours a day. I want to focus on my child a little bit. When my child grows up just a little bit, I'll step on the gas again. And then you can pay me those fancy bonuses again. But for now, it's okay if you pay me average bonuses. I'm fine. I understand that my compensation and my rewards will take a hit, and I'm okay with that. And I promise you, I will do good work. Just that it won't be 20 hours a day. Is that okay, boss? Now tell me, guys, is this an honest conversation that should be had? Does it ever take place in any organization? No, it doesn't, right? Why? Now imagine taking it one step further. Hey boss, I want to be honest with you. I like this company, but this job is not the be all and end all for me. I do this job only because I have to pay the bills. Because my real passion is theater or music, right? So I really need this job because theater and music doesn't always pay the bills. So is it okay if you give me the minimum possible work, boss, that allows me to just keep my job? And I am fine that you pay me also at the minimum possible level because minimum effort, minimum pay. I'm fine with that, boss. And by the way, I'm also fine with taking the risk that if I fall below the minimum standard according to your judgment, you will fire me without any questions asked. I'm okay with that too. Again, is this an honest conversation? Of course it is. Does it ever happen anywhere? Absolutely not. Well, whether we like it or not, whether you set stretch goals, whether you manage people day in and day out or don't manage them at all, performance in any group is going to distribute itself along this bell curve. This is a law of nature that comes from 80-20, right? So why not legitimize it and pay people according to what they want to do? What's wrong with this logic? Yeah? But try explaining this to anybody and they say, no, 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 no. Not only do these honest conversations between manager and employee not take place, managements are in denial about this. Why are they in denial? Because of this fear that if we let people choose, if we let people free, they won't do any work at all, or they will do very little work and my organization will suffer. Recently, I was talking to a very, very senior leader, a business leader. Okay, I shall not obviously name them, but they said to me, Rajeev, all of this is good in theory, but let me tell you the practical reality. I said, tell me, sir. And he says, well, I sit in a big hall just outside where all my employees sit. So my office is here and my people are all right there. And even though I'm sitting right in the office, they don't do as hard work as they should. Many of them do minimum work. And so if I let them free, what will happen? He said, right? Now I can understand that fear to some extent, but I asked him this question. I said, well, what you're doing is not working, right? You just said that yourself. Now what is the alternative? Instead of sitting in your office, you and each supervisor, you put one supervisor behind the back of every employee and watch them 24/7? Is that the answer? Well, the fact that you're in front of them is not working. What else are you going to do? Why don't you keep an open mind and understand this as a law of nature and try freedom? Because it does work. It works in many, many organizations that have tried it. Let me give you just one example where this works brilliantly. And this is where, we have to understand that the current economy we live in is very different from 10 years ago. The 21st century, we call it the open source era, where everything is open, everything is transparent. Freedom is what works. Because whether we like it or not, people in the gig economy, they want this freedom. Yeah? So let's take an example. Take an example of Uber as a company. Okay? In a survey of Uber drivers, it was found that 62% of Uber drivers were either full-time or part-time employed in another job, and they were driving Uber in their spare time to make some extra money. For 38% of Uber drivers, driving for Uber was their main source of income. But whether they were driving Uber full-time or whether they were driving Uber part-time, a full 78% of them said they are very happy, energized, and satisfied with their job. And 73% said they prefer a job with no boss. 78% engagement, as against the global average of 13%. Now, clearly, Uber is doing incredibly well despite some recent bad press, probably because they have gotten the secret of two things right. They've gotten the secret of how to motivate people, and they've gotten the secret of how to maximize organizational performance, and the answer to both is exactly the same. Let people choose how much or how little they want to work, and don't supervise them. As against Uber, let's take the case of the New York taxi company. You know, New York taxi drivers are given a universal daily revenue target. You got to make this much revenue every day. If you make any more than that, nothing. You don't get any incentive. You don't get any share of that. So you have zero incentive to go above that, right? This was designed, this universal daily target was designed to keep drivers under check and under control, right? But it gives them zero flexibility. If I work harder one day, I can't take it easy the next day. No such thing. Whereas if I'm an Uber driver and I want to take a long lunch with my wife because it's her birthday, I'll drive a few extra hours in the evening. These guys have no such flexibility, right? So what happens on a rainy day is that the demand for taxis in New York City, any of you who's been to New York know what I'm talking about, the demand for taxis in New York is very high. Everybody's looking for a taxi, right? What happens then is they meet their daily target at about 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And they knock off work and they go home. Now try getting a taxi on a rainy day in New York City at 4 p.m., 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. It's incredibly hard. Some of you are smiling because you've experienced this, right? This is what happens. One side is control, the other side is freedom. You decide. So, what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, is this. If you want to maximize the performance, overall performance of your organization, and maximize individual performance of each person, and also maximize the employee engagement of all employees, let them choose where they want to be on the 20-60-20 curve and pay them accordingly. Have those honest conversations. If you really want to improve performance, set them free. Thank you very much.